All right, good morning, everyone.
Oh, yeah, okay, I know that.
We have a bit of a small crowd here this morning, so I'm viewing that as a very positive thing. We'll be able to have a highly interactive discussion here this morning. My name is Pete Geared. I'm President and CEO of Innovate Calgary, and it was really great of Lori to give a shout out to Innovate Calgary in her presentation. It was even greater to see Lori at this time of day because I've never had that experience before. So welcome to our session here this morning. As you can see, it's called Smart IT, Choices for Small Business. We'll have a lot of dialogue about what are appropriate solutions for small business in the IT space. There's a lot of new technology coming down the pipeline, cloud services, various mobile services, etc. And we'll have a dialogue here this morning about what's best for small companies and how best to approach it. We have two speakers in our event here this morning. I'll start by introducing Everett Taves, and then I'll introduce our second speaker after Everett. So Everett does work at Rackspace involving making Openstack and the Rackspace cloud easy to use for developers and operators. He is a sometimes developer, sometimes advocate, and sometimes operator. He's a committer on Apache JCloud and co-authored the Openstack Operations Guide, and in the past, he's built web applications, taught workshops, and presented at conferences such as GlueCon and the Openstack Summits, and he's also deployed Openstack in production. So please join me in welcoming Everett.
Okay, I'm good here? Thanks everyone. Okay, so my name again is Everett Taves. I'm a developer advocate at Rackspace in the developer relations group. And here today to talk to you a bit about smart IT and the kinds of choices you need to make when you're considering adopting the cloud. So just a bit about myself again, because I still get the question, what is a developer advocate? What does a developer advocate even do? So first and foremost, I am a developer. I develop software. In specific, I'm working on the Apache JClouds project right now. This is a top-level project at Apache, and it's a Java SDK for many different clouds, actually. You can use this SDK to talk to Amazon, Rackspace, HP, even SoftLayer. So you don't have to commit to a particular platform when you're getting started. The advocate part of the job is the guy you see singing and dancing before you today. He's the one who goes around to all the conferences and talks to people, running workshops, attending hackathons, getting developers, getting their hands dirty, getting rubber on the road and starting to use it, actually use this stuff and really get their head into it. And this is me on the various Twitters and GitHubs and Google Pluses and where have you. I've also done some operations in my time. Actually, my previous job was at Cybera, and that was where I deployed the first OpenStack cloud in Canada. There was a region here in Alberta and one in Quebec. And I actually deployed that with one of my comrades, Barton Satchwell from Cybera, who actually isn't here today. To that end, I helped co-author the Openstack Operations Guide. This was a book we actually wrote in 5 days over a book sprint. And we generated, I can't even remember how many words, but kind of the remarkable thing to me about it was that we actually wrote the book in like 3.5 or 4 days, and we spent that other day and a half editing it down. But now that O'Reilly's picked it up, apparently our standards of editing aren't quite as high as their standards of editing. So we're gonna go back and go over it again. And actually, I have one of my co-authors here in the audience, Joe Topchin from Cybera. And it's great to have him here. It's great to have Cybera in Alberta. They're just an incredible organization doing amazing things. Okay, so we're here today to talk a bit about the cloud. Who's familiar with the NIST definition of the cloud? The IaaS, SaaS, PaaS definition? Okay, I thought it was a little more commonly known than that. So good, I'm gonna quickly run through it, get us all on the same page so we know what we're talking about. And who here has actually used the cloud? Okay, great. So, this is me on a typical day. Old man yells at cloud. I do have a little bit of gray in my beard here. So occasionally things don't go as planned, but hopefully everything will go well today for my live demo. So first of all, getting back to the definition, there's software as a service, and this is definitely the most common thing that people encounter when they're using the cloud. This is the web applications we use every day. You know, even things like Facebook, Google, Gmail, all these things fall under the definition of software as a service. It's just stuff you use. So some examples are Gmail, WordPress, or for e-commerce solutions, Magento Gold. Platform as a service is another flavor. This is one where developers write applications and they're only worried about writing application code, and they pass that application code off to a platform as a service provider, and the platform as a service provider worries about all the details about deploying it and scaling it and all those other things. So the developers can focus on the application code. And some examples here are Heroku, Google App Engine, and the open source PaaS known as Cloud Foundry. Then there's infrastructure as a service. And there's the Openstack family of infrastructure as a service providers, including Rackspace, HP, and then there's a handful of smaller ones, DreamHost, Internet. They seem to be popping up every month. There's a new OpenStack public computing provider. Of course, there's Amazon, Microsoft, and Google as well in the cloud space. Then there's private cloud. So this is cloud that you can actually bring on-premise and run in your data center or in your closet, if that happens to be what your data center looks like. You have to throw a couple servers, more likely a couple old desktops in the corner, and call that your cloud. Examples here are OpenStack, CloudStack, and OpenNebula. So what does it actually mean, these different various flavors of cloud? What are you responsible for when you're working with these different flavors? So off on the right, you have software as a service, which is entirely managed by the vendor. They worry about all the details of absolutely everything. You just log in and start using the service, hopefully easily, sometimes not so easily. But the idea is that you're just consuming the service yourself and you don't have to worry about any of the details. Very easy to use. Then there's platform as a service. As I mentioned, you're just worried about writing the application code. That's what you're responsible for. The vendor takes care of all the rest. Then there's infrastructure as a service. Things get a little more complicated. You're responsible for a bit more, but you have more control. And you have to worry about your applications, your virtual machines, and all the runtimes within them, and managing all those things, and all the different security patches, and making sure everything's up to date. And then there's private cloud, where you're responsible for the full stack, right from literally the nuts and bolts up to the hypervisor and everything else in between. So, you're running a cloud, you're responsible for everything. So what are some of the aspects you need to consider when you're thinking about adopting some flavor of cloud? Now this is really just a handful of them. There's many other dimensions to what you need to consider as you're doing so. So these are some ones that are important to me. Ease of use, that's maybe one of the most important. And as you're going towards the right, towards software as a service, things are just easier to use. It also tends to be a little more expensive. You pay for that convenience, you pay for that ease of use. And you might think private cloud, oh, well that's the most expensive of all of them. What's it doing out there on the left? Well, when you hit a certain scale, when you're running an application that's processing so many transactions 24/7, 365, it actually starts to make a lot of sense to run a private cloud. So your developers can develop, you have your staging, and you have your production maybe, even within your cloud, because it just makes more sense than paying a third-party provider. Then there's the complexity of running that private cloud or using infrastructure as a service. You need to have a skill set, you need to have the people with the operational knowledge to make these things work. It's non-trivial. And these skill sets are getting hard to find because this software is becoming very, very popular. And the labor market in the tech industry, you would absolutely never know that there's any sort of recession going on. It's white hot and people are getting snapped up as quickly as they come out of school. And then finally, one of the most important aspects is the control that you get. you have full and complete control all the way to the left. Now, if you're not willing to accept the complexity, well then you might want to take a step back and think about infrastructure as a service. And that's what I'm going to focus on in my talk today. So what really is infrastructure as a service? I'm trying to boil it down to a really basic definition, something you can hold in your head. I view it as just infrastructure with an interface. So you have these fundamental building blocks of computing: virtual machines, load balancers, databases, queues, block storage, object storage, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on and on and on. And it seems like new features are being added to the cloud practically monthly. So how do you actually use these different building blocks? How do you put these bricks together and actually create an application out of them? How do you create an application architecture? You use an interface, of course. And at its very base, at the very bottom, you have an application programming interface. And this is accessed over HTTP. And you're just making calls to it, kind of actually like you would use your web browser. You send out a call and you say, start up a virtual machine. So that's at its most basic, and that's how you can access it programmatically. And then on top of that, there's things known as software development kits, where you can access it in a particular programming language. And then there's also command line interfaces for operations people to just be able to script the creation of these resources. And then there's the layer that we're probably all definitely familiar with, which is the web user interface. Everyone's used the web, and this is yet another way you can access infrastructure as a service. So it's simply infrastructure with an interface. Okay, so how is this all relevant to businesses? How is this relevant to you? Okay, I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to business. It's not my field. I focus very much on the technology. I try to keep a toe in the business world, but bear with me as I kind of try to muddle my way through a business case here. So I see a lot of companies who it seems like they don't even know what business they're in. They've got the closet full of servers, and they're running this hardware. They're paying people to maintain it. Things are breaking down. They're replacing drives. But really, are most businesses in the business of running hardware? No. You're doing something else. Your core competency is elsewhere. You're not operations people. That's not what you do. What trade-offs are you willing to make when it comes to deciding on the flavor of cloud you need to choose? It's a matter of looking over those aspects that I mentioned before: ease of use, cost, scale, complexity control, among many others, to find out what kind of value you can get from the cloud and the particular flavor you're thinking about adopting. So going back to the question of what business are you in, well, you're probably not an accounting firm, but almost certainly accounting is part of your business. It's part of everybody's business. So do you really want to run a virtual machine and deploy accounting software on there and use it that way? Or do you just want to keep it easy and have it out on the right, software as a service, and you just go out and consume some service? And let somebody else worry about all the details, because accounting is not your core competency. Likewise with expense management. Everybody has to do it, but it's probably not your core business. So use some off-the-shelf software as a service that you just consume. But maybe you're making widgets, and widgets are the most important thing in the world to you, and you need to sell those widgets. You need to find a way to get those widgets out into the market. And maybe it's so important to you that you need to control every single aspect of how you get those widgets out into the market. And a big part of that will be a web presence and how you actually set up your e-commerce site, that experience that your users have when they're buying your product. So maybe you want some more control, and you start moving to the left towards infrastructure as a service. Well, for sure with mobile apps, most mobile apps these days have some sort of cloud component to them where they sync with the cloud, so your data is saved in the cloud. It's not just saved on your phone. So when you inevitably lose or crack the screen on your phone, you can just easily recover it. So there's probably going to be a cloud component, and you're going to consider options like platform as a service and kind of a brother service to it, mobile backend as a service. And certainly, if you're creating web applications to deliver a service to your users, you're certainly going to need some sort of infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, or possibly even private cloud if you start running at a certain scale and the value proposition starts to make sense where you want to adopt private cloud. Okay, so here's the fingers crossed part. I'm going to try and do a live demo here. So let's say that you've got your website and you want to add a blog to it. You want to start getting news about your product out there. You don't know how much traffic you're going to get, so you need a solution that's possibly going to scale. WordPress is a pretty well proven option for doing that. So I'm going to demonstrate to you today exactly how you would create a WordPress installation, an entire WordPress application architecture on infrastructure as a service, in particular on the Rackspace cloud. So let's start by going to developer.rackspace.com. Okay, so the reason I'm starting at developer.rackspace.com is this box in the right-hand corner here. Sign up for the developer discount. Do we have any developers in the room? Not bad, not bad. We've got a few. Okay, so for everyone who isn't a developer, I hereby christen you, all developers, that you may partake of the developer discount. So I invite you to use the developer discount and kick the tires. If you haven't tried out infrastructure as a service before, like Rackspace or Amazon or Azure or whatever, this gives you a chance to at least try it without, paying too much out of pocket. In fact, if you keep it under $50 a month, you won't pay anything out of pocket. So you can just go ahead and go to developer.rackspace.com and sign up over here on the right. So once you've got your account, you go to the control panel. And this is the web interface to our infrastructure as a service solution. And immediately we land on the servers page. I'm just going to correct the resolution here. I think that's still sort of readable. And to spin up our WordPress installation, I'm going to use a new product coming out of Rackspace and Openstack known as deployments. So this is a service that allows you to create any kind of web application from a template. I'm just going to go ahead and fire one up, WordPress in particular. I'm going to put it in the Northern Virginia data center here. So you can see there's quite a few blueprints, quite a few templates. We're choosing WordPress with Linux servers and a cloud database. And we're going to need to add a DNS entry later, and we specify it here. Need some credentials so we can access our installation layer. Now we've jumped to step 2. We're going to add a couple other web servers to our install. And they're Ubuntu 12.04. It doesn't even particularly matter. And we have our database here. I'm just going to keep all the defaults. So this is going to spin up and start to create this entire application architecture. And you can see as we jump to the next page. It's a bit better. So as the whole architecture builds, we get an indication of the progress that's going on here. We're deploying WordPress 3.6.1 at the site I specified before with these credentials. And as you can see, these are the resources that are spinning up. So what am I really doing here? Well, first of all, thank you so much for bearing with me. And let's take a little bad slide break. I've got some text that's way too small here to see, outdated memes and ridiculous internet buzzwords. This is actually me I think this was the winter of 2009 at my house in Edmonton, and we can't hear the audio, unfortunately, but my kids are absolutely laughing their heads off here. It was a fun year. Okay, so the Rackspace deployments. Like I was saying, this is a service that does orchestration, as it's typically called in the cloud. It creates different pieces of an application architecture and installs all the software on them that you need and wires it all together. So it wraps up a lot of complexity into just a couple button clicks. As I said, it is in early access mode right now. I believe if you do sign up, you will have access to it immediately, but it's not fully featured yet. We've got a static set of templates that you can use, but eventually you'll be able to create your own and add all sorts of different resources to them, but not everything is wired in yet. But this is just a really kind of, I think, cool feature, and I wanted to show it off as soon as I could. Okay, so here's what we did with our Rackspace deployments. We created a load balancer, 3 web servers, and a database. And your audience, your readers, would connect to the load balancer via DNS entry I'm going to create later. And they're informed about your product, your widgets, your service, your mobile app, whatever it is, whatever you're running on the cloud. And it's worthwhile to note that all these web servers and the load balancer are entirely public, but we keep the database private, so it's only accessible from other resources within the cloud. We don't want to make it publicly available to the world. So some details on the software that was being installed there. The load balancer is what's termed a Rackspace load balancer, but it's based on Zeus. The web server is Apache. WordPress itself is being installed by deployments, and it's a PHP application. The cache is done with Varnish. There's static content that's synced between the different web servers. Those were the horizontal lines in the diagram. And that's the syncing that happens between those different web servers. You can FTP resources, files, images, videos, whatever you need to, up to your WordPress deployment. And the database is a Rackspace Cloud database, which is backed by MySQL. And local backups of that database are done via a product called Holland. Okay, so going back to the control that you get when you deploy an application like this, we have an administrator, an operator, like myself or anyone else who's running this sort of stuff at your business, and they can access the database. So this is the kind of thing that you wouldn't be able to do with software as a service. It's just not possible. The services who are running WordPress just don't allow you access to the database directly because, of course, naturally, and with good reason, they're afraid that you're going to monkey around with things and screw something up. So at least you're safe, but you don't have full control. You can't get that raw data out of your database. In this case, you can. You have full access. So let's go back and see how our deployment's doing. It does take about 6 or 7 minutes to deploy the whole thing. And I've lost my mirrored screen here, so this will be fun. Okay, so we're a good portion of the way through. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a DNS entry. So I take the public IP of our load balancer, and I go over to the DNS cloud service here. I just need to create a record. This is a domain name that I have registered before, and I've set it up to work with Rackspace Cloud DNS. And set the time to live for 5 minutes. Okay, so we have our domain set up. Now we just need to add a record. And that's the IP address of our load balancer. Same time to live. Don't worry about that detail. So what we've done is we've mapped this domain name, wordpress.fimata.com, to the IP address of our load balancer, just as a convenience for our users. We take they can go to that domain, easy to remember, and it sends them to our load balancer, which will send the request to our WordPress installation, and that's how your users will wind up seeing their content. So let's head back to our deployments and see how it's doing. This is the servers page of the Cloud Control Panel. You could conceivably do all this stuff manually, do all this stuff yourself, spin up the individual resources and install all the proper software in each one. It's just that Rackspace Deployment makes it easy, right? That's the point. Just make it a couple clicks, set a few values, and off you go. So we're at 70% here. Let's actually go back here and take a look at some of the other blueprints that you could create. So there's a lot of software stuff that a lot of software frameworks that you can start up with deployments. The WordPress installation is actually bootstrapped with a CMS, it's with Chef, a configuration management system. Sorry, don't care to use too many acronyms. But it's actually not managed from Chef thereafter. So, down the road, you'll be able to create a blueprint that not only fires up a WordPress installation and all the different pieces, but it could fire up a Chef server as well. And you could use that to maintain your deployment in the long run. There's various other things. There's the Ghost blogging platform, the one you were talking about before, David. There's also Magento is one of the options here. And various other bits and pieces. Strong Loop Suite is a mobile backend as a service that you can fire up yourself. Drupal is a content management system, as opposed to a configuration management system. Easy enough to get confused. So those are just some of the other options. So we're still at 70% here. You can see that all of our resources have actually fired up and are running now. And the software is starting to install on those resources. Then there's further some instructions on what you do next. So actually, this is one of the things I really appreciate about deployments is that you have what do I do next. So many things, it's like, oh, here's how you install it, and then it stops right there. So now you actually have, your next step. What do you do next? Still at 70%. Lots of fun. So let's head back to developer.rackspace.com for the moment and talk about the developer discount bit. So there are a few terms and conditions here. It really only applies to the US and UK based data centers. So if you were to spin up a server or any other resource in one of our, either the Hong Kong or a Sydney data center, you'd be charged for that resource immediately. Like I was saying before, you get a $50 per month credit for 6 months, for a total of $300. And to give you a kind of an idea of what you can do with that $50 per month, you could spin up a 1 gigabyte performance server and run that for 30 days, and that would cost $30 per month. So you could run a 1 gig performance server for 6 months. It would cost you absolutely nothing. You could deploy whatever you want with it, throw whatever application you want on there and let other people use it. And you still have $20 per month to kick the tires on the other aspects of the cloud that you might be interested in. Of course, if you do go above that $50 per month, you do wind up getting charged. I do want to make that clear. It's not applicable for the cloud sites or the managed cloud side of things. And of course, you can only sign up for one, but I think that's probably pretty clear.
Excuse me.
Yes?
What's that patent roles you had as a commission at the bottom? I couldn't read it all. It says war on patent controls.
Oh, yeah. So this is, well, thank you for pointing that out. So this is actually something that's entirely unrelated to deployments or even kind of, in a sense, the cloud itself. This is a more broad thing that Rackspace is doing for the good of the software industry. They're going to war on the patent trolls. Software patents have been a huge problem in the software industry, and there's these companies that just accumulate patents, and all they do is sue people. That's their whole business model: accumulate patents, sue people. And it's really been tough on everybody, really, and it's stifling innovation, and it's been an extremely huge pain point in the software industry, and we're doing something about it. And there are a lot of other companies who are on board, but we've kind of taken the lead. Okay, so as you probably saw, our deployment is now complete. And the first thing I want to do is show you that control that we have, that we're able to access our database of our WordPress deployment here. So what I'll need to do is first log into one of our web servers. Actually, the first thing I'll need to do is grab our credentials. And we only get to see them once, so we're going to just throw them in a temporary spot. So it'll be okay if I run a few minutes, as we discussed before? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to create a file for the private key here. And put it in this file. I have to change some permissions on the file so SSH is happy with it. And then I'm going to want to log into our web server with that file. At this IP address, this public IP address. Okay, so here I am. Now I'll be able to access our private database using the MySQL command line tool. And I just need to provide the host name of the database within the Rackspace Cloud. And that is back on our deployments page. And the password that we got from our credentials. Okay, so we're in. DB1 is our database, so we'll use that. And okay, so we can see our WordPress tables, and we can access them however we need to. So let's take a quick look at our deployment here. So here's our WordPress site, your blog site, your news site, where you can get content out to your users, let them know about what it is you're doing, the services you're offering, the widgets you're selling, whatever it is that you need to do. And I'm running a bit short on time here, so I was going to show how you create a post here, and you can see the database. I think it's clear that we do have access to the database. We do have full control there. You can get that information out and do whatever you want with it, whenever you want with it. So to wrap things up, the WordPress deployment is easy to deploy. It's pretty scalable. You can just keep adding those web servers. You can get to a certain point and start to need to do other things, but relatively easy to scale. There's clearly some complexity. There was some hoop jumping I had to do there. There's some special knowledge that I needed to know to make all the other little bits and pieces fit together nicely, and to show you how you can get that control. So, considering your trade-offs, if the news and blogging is really crucial to you, then I would want to go with infrastructure as a service. But if you're going with an e-commerce solution, like Magento, well, we've got that too, but it only starts up a single server. And so it's not with Apache, PHP, and MySQL. Easy enough to deploy with deployments, but it's not so scalable. There is some complexity in it, and again, you do get lots of control. But because it's not so easy to scale, maybe you want to consider software as a service for something like that. So now what? Like I was saying, you really need to choose your trade-offs. What's important to you? Which aspects mean the most to you and your business? Choose the business that you're in. Are you running servers, or are you selling widgets, or are you creating web applications and services for your end users? So thank you very much. My name is Everett Taves, and I'll turn things back to our MC here.
Good, thanks, Everett. Our next speaker is Shaheen Chowdhury. Shaheen is IT management consultant and strategic business analyst. He's been advising clients for 10 years on IT planning, management, application development, and enterprise resource planning. He's worked with the largest consulting firms such as KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Accenture. He started his own consulting firm back in 2006 in order to provide fresh and pragmatic advice to clients in Canada and the US, covering industries such as healthcare, finance, higher education, utilities, technology, and oil and gas. Shaheen firmly believes in taking an agile approach to analyzing and recommending practical ways to use business technology. He's got a passion for emerging technologies, entrepreneurship, and the user experience. So Shaheen, are we set up there?
Yes, the
Thank you very much, Everett, for your introduction to different options and perspectives of cloud. So from SaaS all the way down to private service, and I really like some of your definitions and how you put in to distinguish all the different types of services that are available out there. I'm going to talk a little bit about small businesses. So cloud software is what I'm going to call the presentation. But really what I'm talking about is cost-effective scale SaaS or software as a service for small businesses. And I'm going to go a little bit into the background of why this is important. So technology enables productivity and new ways of doing business. However, the ever-changing IT landscape and sheer number of choices that are available out there, it can be sometimes overwhelming for small businesses to see how they can leverage that technology and how that technology enable what they do, right? Again, just like Everett mentioned, are you in the business of selling widgets, or are we, talking about running an IT infrastructure or applications that may be needed for your business? Most small businesses, don't have dedicated IT staff, so they're quite constrained on resources and technical knowledge. So what I want to kind of walk through is that, they have the need for technology solutions that are inexpensive, that fulfill their purposes, that help enable their businesses, and they are scalable as well to some extent as their business grows. Right? So in this session, I'm going to talk about such IT solutions that are cost effective and are scalable. All right. So I'm going to deviate a little bit from that just want to go back into, again, the importance of technology and planning technology this is President Obama talking about the online healthcare exchange at the end of September this year. And we all know the debacle around what happened. So this healthcare exchange was set up for Americans to buy, and I'm quoting this from Economist, this week's Economist. So this was set up for Americans to buy affordable health insurance and was supposed to work, as Mr. Obama put there, it would be really simple and it would work the same way you shop for TV on Amazon. So ease of use. It's a big change, in America, the whole idea around healthcare and everybody being able to buy it. Alas, it didn't. Millions tried to log on, few succeeded. The website was never properly tested. Crucial specifications were changed at the last moment. Contractors warned that website was not ready, but the message never reached the Oval Office. Big government IT projects go awry, but rarely as spectacularly as this. The cost of technology failure can be high, which is evident in the political cost and financial and others. Technology underpins and enables everything business and personal these days, so it is important to get it right. But the good news is that it's not always so difficult or costly to do so. So before I go into the details of what's available out there, it is important for us to think about it, right? Because it enables everything that we do in business and in our personal life. So we're going to start with the cloud software. This is what the focus of my discussion is going to be in my talk. So I'm going to walk through a scenario of a small business. And what are the key things that they, as an example, may need, right? So as Everett alluded to, that there's certain capabilities that every small business needs to have, like there's accounting, there's if they're in the business of selling widgets, we'll use that as an example. They need a presence where they can actually market and sell that, those widgets, etc. So we'll talk about different SaaS solutions out there and how they enable that. So I'm going to go over quickly and talk about a couple of these software as a solution services out there, and talk a little bit about what are their key features, what are the benefits to the small businesses, and what's the cost, approximately cost to run them, and how scalable they are. So we'll start at the top, which is an online store. So if you use the example of a company that is selling some products, they'd like to have an online presence on the internet. They'd like to be able to sell their products, have their customers go online to their stores, and be able to purchase their products. This is a software as a service solution out there called Magento Gold. It's open source, and it's got lots. You don't need to be a programmer or an IT resource to be able to administer this solution. As Everett talked about, in the SaaS stack, you're really taking care of the application. Everything else below that is actually, no, the whole stack is actually managed by the service provider, right? So you're really just administrating the application and updating it with content and information. That's all you're doing. So there's not a lot of technical knowledge that is required for that. You can customize the look and feel of the online store. So you can brand it exactly how you like to. If you've got some resources in-house that know a little bit of HTML, they can go and do a little bit more, get a bit more creative. You have a lot of flexibility on how you structure the product catalog. There's all kinds of options you can add in there, and most of us who've been on e-commerce sites, there's these are you can have all kinds of products, all kinds of categorization, etc. So it's very flexible. Search engine optimization is built into it, so when you're setting up the website, it helps you, it walks you through the process of optimizing your website so that when people are looking for products that you're selling, your site does show up in the search results. Loyalty programs, most stores or brands have some sort of loyalty program, so if your business is interested in having that, this solution actually has that built into it. Another great thing is that this site, or if you go with this solution, the interface is designed not only for desktop computing, that is laptop and desktop, but is actually out of the box configured for smartphones and tablets. So it's sometimes frustrating if you have, as a customer, I'm going to a site and it's actually not designed for, they've got a lot of products, great products, but it's difficult for me to actually use it's not optimized for the touch interfaces that smartphones and tablets have. But this site, gives you both, the web apps are mobile and desktop optimized. So now, in terms of cost, here's an idea. This is approximately how much it costs for small business. This includes 24/7 support. So just an idea about what costs we're talking about here. Right? So about $25 a month if you've got about 500 products you're selling, and you can scale that up. And there's a whole bunch of tiers in between, just to get an idea. So the top tier, I believe, is $125 a month and about 10,000 products or unique SKUs that you can have. This is an example of something that's not that difficult to deploy, and it's very useful for sure. Next, I'm going to talk about accounting. So accounting is something that all businesses, of course, this is something that that is required of them to keep track of how they're doing in business, what money is coming in, how much money is going out, what does their profit look like, and all that. So small businesses, they can have accounting packages, software that's installed on the desktop, but then you also have to worry about, if there's an upgrade or something, there's licensing costs involved, so it's not always easy. Sometimes if you don't upgrade your software and you're a few versions behind, then it becomes challenging to move to the, a few versions ahead. FreshBooks is an example, and there's many others out there of SaaS solution for accounting. It's I believe a company started up in Canada, in Toronto, I believe. They've been very successful. So what they provide again is a full software as a service solution. Customizable look, so just like Magento Gold, so you can actually customize it so that the software has the look and feel of your company's brand. It provides online invoicing, so you can create invoices, and using a web application, and be able to create invoices, send the invoices to your customers. Automatic expense tracking, so it actually interfaces with most Canadian banks and other financial institutions to look at, if you've got business accounts and, what expenses you're running, so it will actually pull that data automatically in. Accounting reports, so standard out-of-the-box accounting reports are already there. You can do some of the P&L, balance sheet, statements, all that kind of, stuff that you do for your taxes is available out of the box. And the beauty of this is that FreshBook has they've got a web application that you can access through any browser. They've also got mobile applications for Android and iOS where you can actually run it on your tablet. If you've got a few people in your office and they want to do some stuff like run some reports, view certain things, they can actually launch it on their tablets and smartphones. So it's just very, very user-friendly. And cost-wise is about $40 a month if you have one staff who's doing most of the accounting, but if you want to scale it up a little bit and provide it to more people, then it's about $40 as a base price and then $10 per month for each additional staff who needs access to FreshBooks. Okay, moving on. Another category is expense management. I just wanted to talk about shoebox.com, which also is a great SaaS offering out there for small businesses. It's basically literally a digital shoebox where you can send them information, documents, receipts, etc. I think they're based out of Australia, and they will digitize all that information for you, and you've got a digital shoebox, right, where you can see what your expenses are. You have actual paper behind those expenses, so when CRA or IRS does your audit, you have, electronic version of all your paperwork, right? So it's basically a centralized place for all your expense management. And I personally use this actually for my business too, and it's great. They've got a number of different ways to interface with this application. So you've got the standard web application that you can launch it on your shoebox.com. You can log in and access it using your laptop or your desktop. They also have a mobile application for iOS and Android. So if you've got a receipt, or you purchased a computer or something else, there's a paper receipt, you can actually launch the camera app or the shoebox app that's running on your smartphone or your tablet and take a picture of that, and it will upload that and it will digitize that information. They also have another widget that runs on, I believe, OS 10 and on Windows as well, where you can actually you put a whole bunch of documents to a scanner, and it will actually take all that stuff and upload it to shoebox.com as well. So there's many ways to streamline the flow, and they actually have envelopes as well, paid envelopes. I don't think that's available in Canada, but in the United States and Australia, you can actually just take their envelope and put all your documents in it and then actually just send it their way, and they'll process them all. So it's pretty neat. And the cost for this service for small business is about $30 a month for 100 documents. And again, they've got a few different tiers. I'm just talking about two here. $50 a month for about 100 or 500 documents. Okay. On to another topic, knowledge management. And what by knowledge management I mean document management, content management, all the information that we collect on our business network drives or SharePoint or LiveLink and all kinds of stuff, right? So, small businesses don't necessarily have the resources to have that kind of setup. So, Evernote for Business is very, very useful. It's got a very strong built-in search capability. It's a very simple concept where you've got a bunch of notebooks and you tag all the information you put in there. You can drag and drop anything from productivity files like Excel, PowerPoints, Word, to videos and images and all kinds of stuff. Basically one big place you can dump it in. You can scan documents and then put them into Evernote. And as you're putting information into it, actually indexing all the content. It tries its best. Even the scanned documents, it will do some sort of OCR. In the OCR process, it actually picks up some of the text. Well, actually OCR, it should pick up all of it. So when you do a search, it's actually very powerful. It does dynamic searching. And the beauty of that, of deploying in your company, is that you can actually share notebooks. If I'm working and I have another person I need to collaborate with, we can actually share notebooks for work purposes. And actually, when somebody is new in the company and they're onboarding, they can actually search for knowledge information through all the shared notebooks. So if they're looking for a specific information, a specific topic, and what work has been done, they don't have to start from scratch. They can actually go on Evernote and actually be able to search that. So it's very powerful, if you scale it in the business. And they've got a number of different ways to access this. So they've got the standard web application that you can access through a web browser. They also have mobile apps running on Android and iOS. And amazing, you can actually take snapshots of documents using your smartphone or your tablet, and it will actually recognize it as a document and do some OCR when you do that. So it's very powerful, and there's so many ways to interface with this application. And even for personal stuff, I find that when I've got all my documents in my phone, and whenever I need to look up some specific information, and I'm for example, at the registry's office, and I need to know my insurance number or some information like that, I can quickly look that up and search through it. It's pretty neat. So cost-wise, it's actually not very expensive. It's about $10 per staff per month, and it's what I was really definitely my favorite thing out there. Now, what I'm going to talk about next is out-of-the-box integration. How much time do we have?
We've got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. So out-of-the-box integration. So it's not just that these things are out there and you can use them in isolation from each other, but there is some out-of-the-box integration available. And I'm going to kind of walk you through some scenario and This isn't by no means the exhaustive list of ways the information will flow through these. So we started with Magento Gold, right, which is the online store. And customers will go onto that store and they will buy products, so they will submit orders, right? Now the orders can come into FreshBooks, and FreshBooks and Magento Gold out of the box have built-in integration. You have to enable it and maybe there's some, of course you have to connect the two services together, but it's not very technical at all. So the orders flow into FreshBooks, and FreshBooks will create those orders and will turn them into invoices and that are ready for you to send to your customers, right? And again, this is out of the box. FreshBook also has out of the box integration with Evernote. Again, you need to just turn it on, enable it, and connect the two services. And your client information that's coming from Magento going to FreshBooks, you can actually, if you choose to, you can actually move that into your knowledge management if you want to do that. So the invoices that you're creating for your clients, the client information, all of that can flow into FreshBook, to Evernote from FreshBooks. And this is just one of the use cases. There's other third-party integration solutions out there that you can configure these things and how the information flows from one service to another, and you can get very creative with that. Another example is expenses. So we talked about Shoebox, all the information goes in there, but actually out of the box, Shoebox and FreshBooks both have integrations. So the information from Shoebox, so you've got all the invoices on one hand coming from Magento, all the orders that are coming from Magento, you got all the customer invoices, but now on the other hand, you also have your expenses, coming in from Shoebox, right? So that's one way you can actually streamline a lot of your workflow. You've got all this information flowing in, and you can actually run reports in FreshBooks and see how you're doing in a month or in a quarter or for the year, right? And then with Shoebox, you have that paper trail, right? So if you get to an audit, you've got all your documentation that's been digitized. And then again, Shoebox out of the box, also has integrations built in with Evernote. Again, you have to enable that. But expenses, you can choose that you can actually dump through all those receipts can actually end up into Evernote, because again, that's your knowledge management. If you choose to do so, you can actually move all that information. So you have one repository where all your information is residing, and you can search through all that stuff. Again, these are optional things. You don't have to turn them on if you don't want to. And again, if you have Shoebox, you have other documents that you send to Shoebox for turning into digital documents. You can allow it so that it actually goes into Evernote and gets filed correctly, categorized correctly, tagged, whatever you want to do. You can actually build that into it. So these are some of the examples of out-of-the-box integrations. And there's a lot of other things you can do with these. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If you go to Google Marketplace, you can see categories of all kinds of business applications, project management, CRM, ERP, all kinds of stuff that you can, as SaaS, you can buy and subscribe to, and they out of the box will talk to each other with simple setups. So takeaways from my presentation. Really, I'm talking about that for small businesses, there is some built-in scalability. As you can see, there's different tiers. So if you want to increase the number of users, increase the number of data, documents, things like that, there are some tiers that you can go through. So there's some scalability available there. Some of these do roll up into enterprise level, like medium-sized businesses. If your business does get to that level, you can do that. Another is low cost. It's not very expensive, so it's not cost prohibitive for small businesses to look at these options, right? And it's relatively easy for a small business owner, for 5 to 10 people or a few more, for them to subscribe, buy these applications, deploy them, and enable those applications to help the business with whatever they're doing, because they're not in the business of running IT, they're in the business of selling widgets. That's it. Any questions? Go. Sure.
I think it's exciting to see sort of all these services emerging and finding new niches in the cloud. And it's hard to hear you say there's competition already, that FreshBooks isn't the only cloud-based accounting software. how painful would it be if you're a user of one of these services, if another service comes on the market that you would actually prefer to use, how painful would it be to transfer, to switch? Is that in their offerings yet? Some way of-
No, not really. I think it's a challenging thing because it's the same thing as if you have different applications in-house in bigger companies and you want to go from, let's say, SAP into Oracle ERP, and data is always difficult to move. But you know, most of these services do provide you to flat file structure to your data, like CSVs and stuff like that. But really, they don't have any out-of-the-box way to get your data out and then be able to upload it directly into. There'll be a lot of manual work required because the data models are all different, right? The taxonomy is different, right? So because of these differences, it's difficult to do that. So when you are subscribing to one of these services, you are sometimes locking yourself in a bit, right? Because it's a lot of work to migrate to something else.
You mentioned integration. We use Zapier. Do you have any other recommended sort of integration tools to work within across these?
There's a few that I don't know at the top of my head. Do you know any?
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, just other integration tools to move between platforms. Like we use one called Zapier, and it lets you connect up, dozens and dozens of these things. If there's any others that you guys know of that you like?
There's a nifty one called If This Then That, and it connects really well to public services, and you can define certain basic actions to, like, if you see a tweet, then I don't know, do a posting on Facebook like that, those sorts of things. And there's an API available for that as well, so you can automate the whole thing.
And it runs on smartphones too, I guess. And you can actually customize and operate some of that from your phone.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes left. We didn't get a chance to have questions of Everett, so if there's any questions anyone has for either one of our speakers, shout them out. Yeah, Ron.
Just either one of you may want to comment on this. If you're just getting started, what sort of, business plan elements would you put together in order to help you make a choice as to where to start and which level of services and how much to pay and what the scalability costs might be, and how would you navigate through that kind of decision process?
So I guess I'd start by saying, again, it depends what business you're in. If you're just, say, starting a consultancy firm, then you're almost certainly going to want to go with software as a service. But if you're actually doing development, things of that nature, or there's something, some aspect of the application, the user experience you want to deliver to your customers that you need full control and customizability, then you start leaning towards the left-hand side, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. In terms of business plan, you want to take that?
No, I think your graph around that scale with complexity and scalability and cost, and with all the different options from SaaS all the way to private, I think that's a good model to use. So what you should be really doing is looking at what does your business do? So map out the capabilities of your business. What are the core capabilities? What are the value chain of your business? What are the capabilities, secondary capabilities that you need to enable the core capabilities of your business? And for each one of those, so for example, accounting, if you're not an accounting firm, you're not providing that as a service, you're actually just running a business, and accounting is something that you have to do to understand how your business is doing financially. That's a secondary capability. So you don't need that much control over how you do accounting, because accounting from most of the industries, it's very similar, right? We all use CGAP or IFRS or something like that, right? So it's not a differentiator for you, right? So if you've got something that is a differentiator for you, you need more control over that.
That's a great way to put it.
So you have to look at what are your differentiators, and those differentiators are your core value chain. So.
And I'll be making my presentation available online, and I'll tweet it at Cybera, and hopefully they'll retweet it out, or we'll find a way to get it to you.
Any other questions? I can't believe we went all the way through the session and no one asked a question about data security. I know we have a session this afternoon, but do either one of you want to comment on data security aspects?
Sure, so this is definitely one that comes up all the time in the infrastructure as a service world, and I'm sure the software as a service world too. I can speak specifically for Rackspace. Obviously I can't speak for other cloud providers. What I do want to say is that when it comes to your data in our cloud, your data is your data, period. There's a great blog post that I would actually encourage people to read in the Rackspace Australia site, and their take from our legal counsel on data security and privacy and those aspects. And to boil it down a little bit, it's that your data is protected under the Fourth Amendment. And that means that we will not, hand over your data in any way, shape, or form without a lawful warrant, properly issued lawful warrant, whatever act that it comes under, Patriot Act, and there's a number of other ways that, justice organizations can get access to this data. So one of the primary concerns of people from other countries, storing their data in American data center is, they're just gonna be able to, they'll be able to use a Patriot Act to get at my data. Well, that's actually not the case. You still need to go through that lawful warrant. And if it's, a Canadian company that needs to see that, if it's CSIS that wants to see that data, they actually have to go through, their counterparts in the States, and they have to get cooperation with them to get access to the data with a lawful warrant.
So my comment would be that, again, I don't work for any of these companies, but generally speaking, this is their core business, is to take your information and help you process the information to enable a business function or business process. So it's not in their interest, and again, you have to be careful on how you understand the agreement. You have to understand all the T's and C's in the agreement, but just keep, so that's due diligence for sure, but if this is their core business, is to make sure that they're fulfilling their requirements, and most companies would like, or most customers of these services wouldn't want their data, to be breached, right? So they don't want that to happen. But another thing is that small businesses, if you're running a bunch of computers under your desk, and you just physically lock the key at the end of the day to your office or your shop, is that more secure than, or are you which is more secure, right? So again, you have to do your due diligence and then just make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Most of these companies, they're pretty transparent about what they do with your information.
Yeah, and I mean, we have literally teams of people thinking about security in the cloud, literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, and does your company have that capability to have teams of people thinking about security all the time? Probably not. So, we take security very, very seriously, and have a lot of people who are very knowledgeable in it.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one more question. Tom?
Just a comment first and then a question. The comment is, as a subscriber to two of the services you're featuring in your product, I did find one of the elements of those software solutions and integration. I've got a follow-up question for you. How to deal with the Evernote and FreshBooks side of it. Because I've been seeing a third-party services being required for that, which was my other comment. As a small business owner and entrepreneur, what I get quite challenged by is the incremental cost creep to all these incremental applications which have substantial feature overlap, but none of them do exactly the perfect job. So for my financial reporting, I have to rely on Quicken for my invoicing and expense tracking. I use FreshBooks because it's a good product for that. So we've got, I think there's still a fair amount of growing to do in this market in integrating services, which was my question, which also I think goes to Peter's too. In tracking the feature sets and the security parameters around a lot of these services, is there a reliable third-party service we can turn to be able to start seeing like a consumer reports guide to these providers?
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, besides the organic community-based, because these things are available to the public and there's lots of people out there, just like we had a comment yesterday. I don't think there is a kind of like a watchdog or a rating agency that kind of says, hey, this is how these guys are doing. I don't think that's there yet. But it's such a new area, it's growing still, and yeah, that'd be a cool, really useful thing to have. But I can totally relate to some of your challenges, because I also find that's an issue.
So if you're willing to get into some of the more technical details, one place where you might be able to get help with doing these kinds of integrations, or maybe even getting a bit of advice, there's a web applications like subsection on Stack Exchange. And this is a place where people who are really knowledgeable in this stuff go. And it's a really great way to get good answers out of a community of people. So if you just if you Google for like Stack Exchange and web applications, you'll see a site that, and there's a whole voting system and managing system, so you get the good answers bubble to the top.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, everyone. And that brings us to the end.